Hey everyone, Hassan here. Welcome to the world of Ha. Today, I have a very special guest with me. She is the game master on Power Rangers HyperForce, Malika Lim.
Hi, everybody. It's so awesome to be here
Thank you
virtually.
so much for joining. This is so cool.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Power Rangers HyperForce, I'm absolutely loving the show, and I want to talk about it. I have a couple questions myself, and I got a couple questions from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. A lot of people have some things that they want to know and get your thoughts on as well. So, should we just jump right in?
Yeah, awesome.
All right. So the first thing is, for those that may not be super familiar, Power Rangers HyperForce is a collaboration between Saban Brands and Hyper RPG. So would you be able to tell some people about what Hyper RPG is, and then what Power Rangers HyperForce is as well?
Absolutely. So, Hyper RPG is a community-driven Twitch channel. We also have a YouTube channel. We have podcasts as well, but mostly we do Twitch content. If you're unfamiliar, because you're watching on YouTube, it's like YouTube, but it's live. And we are known for our live tabletop RPG shows. And the reason why people usually enjoy watching them is because we tell stories through role-playing games. If you don't know what a role-playing game is, it's like improv storytelling. However, some things are left to chance and they're decided by dice rolls. So that's the kind of quick and dirty what Hyper RPG is. We do tabletop RPG shows, and that's why people watch. I think we've surveyed our audience actually over the past few years, and everybody says they watch for the story. So that's what we do. And Power Rangers HyperForce is a live tabletop RPG in the Power Rangers universe, and the players are actually former and current Power Rangers alumni, and also Power Rangers super fans. So it's been really fantastic.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's definitely a different format for Power Rangers fans out there. Obviously, it's live and it's interactive, and so it's definitely a different format. And it took me like an episode to kind of get used to it, but now like just the story and just kind of feeling like I feel like I have to be there live to be a part of the experience. You know, it's definitely fresh.
Well, that's the kind of feeling that we're trying to create where you're experiencing it with other people who are experiencing it along with you. So when you think a joke is really hilarious, it kind of is fun to see other people are just like blowing up the chat room. They also think it's really funny. Or if a mystery is revealed on the show, some people are like, "Oh, I knew it all along," or like, psh. So it's really it really brings people together. I think Twitch is a fantastic community building platform because you can really connect, and you can't be not you because there's no editing, right? So like when I like flub up words, or if I'm nervous, or if I'm tired or sick or so excited I can't even contain myself, I think that really comes across Twitch because you can't hide who you are.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's cool to see some of those moments, especially we'll talk about some stuff later, but you can see some of the characters breaking moments a little when they're just so excited about something, or it's definitely a lot of fun. So I have a question from Joseph Murillo on Facebook, and so he wanted to know about how Hyperforce came to be. I know Peter had talked about pitching it to Saban Brands and that sort of thing, but maybe some more details on the Hyper RPG side of things, and maybe even like why the name Hyperforce. That's
Sure. Okay. Hyper RPG has kind of a portfolio of work. We've done many live tabletop RPGs. We have Pencils and Parsecs, a Star Wars RPG. We had Valiant Vanquished, a Valiant comic book universe RPG. We have Roguelike now, an improv RPG, a horror RPG, so many different ones. Also Pathfinder for those who like the old school dungeon crawling RPGs. And so we already had this portfolio of work, and they became familiar at Saban Brands about our work. There's actually a few people who work at Saban Brands who like to watch Twitch, so that was very interesting. And I have always been a fan of, Power Rangers. So Zach, who is the CEO and founder of Hyper RPG, was like, "Oh, let's like do this thing." So we pitched to Saban Brands for like 8 months about what Power Rangers Hyperforce could be. And, it took some time, and finally everybody is like, okay, we want to do this, but how? And so we had to hash that out. And we had about 2 months to get the show ready before it went live. And that was 2 months to cast people, 2 months to like, get the rules down, the cards made, and all the video assets, the overlay, all that stuff, which was not a lot of time. And the name HyperForce, so we actually, so they were saying, oh, what are we going to call it? And first we were talking about, is it going to be our own original Ranger team, or is it going to be a mishmash of like all stars from 25 years of Power Rangers history? And we really pushed for an original Ranger team. We thought that was very exciting because normally we have to inherit footage from the Sentai, and we're like, why don't we make like a Saban Brands original team? And I was very excited about that. And I think Peter was too, because he, got involved and he started just sketching up. He's so creative. I love it. And the first thing when they said was, what are we going to name it? I just said HyperForce immediately because so many of the teams are something Force. And it's like Hyper RPG. So it's HyperForce. Is that okay, guys? And they're like, we'll think about it. And we went forward with that one. I guess the other options weren't as good. So
Nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously the name fits for sure. So that's pretty cool. I have to imagine, I mean, with Saban Brands, like they're so protective of the franchise, naturally so. It's been going on for 25 years. So for them to partner with Hyper RPG and do this kind of improv format, it must have taken a lot of trust to be able to build that relationship.
absolutely. And we continue to, work closer together and build and foster that relationship. It's completely understandable though, because it is a children's IP. Kids watch it for generations, and now parents. I love the stories they tell me about how it's like people my age who grew up watching Power Rangers, and now they're like revisiting the franchise because their children are watching the new Neo Saban Power Rangers series. And I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful, And every week I have meetings with, our representatives at Saban Brands. Melissa Flores, who has been on the live stream, I talk to her like pretty much every weekend. And sometimes I'm just texting her like, what was that thing called? Are we going to explain this? Because there's also contradictions in the television show. So we have to like deal with that, which is, completely understandable because they have to like deal with their own logistics of budget and time constraints and inheriting footage from the Sentai, which sometimes contradicts ourselves. But like then in our universe that we're trying to build, which has its own internal logic, how are we going to reconcile that kind of stuff? So we're always talking to them, but they're really cool. And I think, there's just, Power Rangers has been around for 25 years. So some of the people that they've brought on kind of recently, they're my generation. They're my age. They're fans of Power Rangers too. They watch Twitch. So they were really excited about bringing, Power Rangers back to Twitch. They really loved, what do you call the marathon where they like streamed every episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like when that happened and there was so much like, it was just a completely new experience. And every time putties showed up, everybody in the chat room was like, blah, 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 blah. They're like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. So, seeing that happen, seeing all like kind of the numbers and the excitement and then the noise, and then kind of seeing what we did with storytelling and RPGs, we're like, come on, guys, it's a perfect match. It did take 8 months of them, like, thinking about it and, working it out. But I think that was actually a really big motivator too, was how well Power Rangers did on Twitch when they did the marathon.
Yeah, I remember definitely waiting and like thinking, okay, so about what time are they going to air this episode? I need to see people's reactions. It was so much fun seeing the community kind of watch it together. Definitely. So with HyperForce, I'm kind of curious as to how much of Power Rangers had you seen before HyperForce began, and how much have you watched in order to specifically prepare for HyperForce?
So, I had watched a lot of Power Rangers growing up, so I feel like I'm so possessive. I'm like, it's mine, but yeah, I was in elementary school when the first Mighty Morphin showed up, and like I was in my living room being like, ah, robots, it got big again. You know, it's like somehow those formulaic shows still like surprise kids. But then there's like the Green Ranger arc, and you're like, shh, now I have to see every episode. So I watched like all the way through. I don't even remember because it would like taper on and off. But I remember Peter in his interview, he said like he felt like he peaked during the Disney era, and I felt like I peaked in Power Rangers in Space. That to me was my favorite season. That was when my sisters were older, my little sisters. So we like I had a friend now to talk to about like what's going on with the show and what happened with like, you know, Corone and like Andros' sister, like all that stuff, right? And then like Eclipse Door and like, no, it's just okay. So there was like all that. And then I think with many people, they kind of fall off a little bit, right? So they, you know, I don't know, in middle school and high school, you do after school sports, you do clubs, you just don't watch like as much TV afterwards. And then in college, I didn't have a TV in my room. However, I kind of like revisited back when my best friend in high school, I also became like an anime fan in like middle school, and it kind of the dots started connecting to me where Power Rangers had this like bigger legacy where it is a mix of tokusatsu shows and giant monster things and like anime, and like I was watching like the old Godzilla, and like to me Power Rangers sometimes is like a non-gender specific magical girl anime in some way, you know what I mean? So it has these components of like other shows that I love and like super teams I love, like Digimon and like Gundam and all that kind of stuff. And then in high school, my best friend decided she had like a fan crush, not like a weird one, on Cam, the Green Ranger. Like she's like, you gotta check out this new Ranger, Malika. He's so cute. And I'm like, what's going on with Power Rangers now? It's like Zordon on a hamster. And so then I kind of like got back into it. And then we brought this up, or Cameron brought this up during a fireside chat the other night. I feel like I'm just babbling with excitement, but my best friend and I, her name's Rebecca Mock. She's a fantabulous illustrator, working in New York now, very, very successful. We made a kind of like Power Rangers live action anime, like Sailor Moon influenced homage / parody. And it took us 2 years to film, and it was an hour long. You know, it's like when you go to film school, they tell you like, don't make a feature-length film, but we didn't care about that. We were like 16 years old. So we made this like crazy film. It's on YouTube, and like it was ice cream themed. And so we had like strawberry chocolate and vanilla. That was like our core set. And then there was like mint chocolate chip, which was kind of like the Green Ranger who'd come in later to join the team as like the fourth like cadet. And then we had at the end like a giant monster battle, and we made like a small cardboard city and a small cardboard robot suit, and we were like, psh, psh, and then we green screen like the people in the cockpits of our giant cardboard robots. It was crazy. It was a lot of fun, and I had cast everybody in my anime club to like play like the high schoolers, because you always have to have like high schoolers, you know, because if you're like over 15 in like this genre, you're like too old to be a hero. Like, so awesome. So yeah, I have been a Power Rangers fan. To answer your question, for a long time, I had mostly watched like the classic Saban era, and then kind of like on and off. And then I kind of revisited it when I was a little older. And then I started watching like Sentai and like Ranger, which was fantastic. And then I think what really brought me back was the 2017 movie and the Boom comic books, because I think the Boom comic books, they are as epic in the terms of storytelling as we would like to remember our childhood was, right? And you're like, holy cow, Rita's actually really scary. Really scary in the comic books. So you're, because you're scared as a kid, and then you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh, she's just goofy. But then you like embrace the goofiness. But then you read the comic books and you're like, oh, I would be terrified to meet her.
Right. Yeah.
So
Like I feel like the stakes are so much actually higher, like in the comics, versus you go back and watch it, you're like, oh, it's just this rubber monster. It just looks like you would just laugh at it if you saw it. But in the comics, they can draw all sorts of crazy creations, and it's definitely really interesting.
absolutely. And to prepare for the show, because we didn't have that much time and it's like 25 years of content. I watched as much as I could, but I also really love Linkara's History of Power Rangers. I think a lot of fans do. He did a fantastic job, and we still refer to it to this day. And the fan Wikipedia, because it's just so much. And so I started watching Power Rangers, and I started taking notes. Any little thread, any like villain that disappeared, any kind of thing that was unexplained, anything that was just kind of interesting. Oh, if we go to this era, SPD, like the technology is very interesting. So we just started taking notes as like possibilities. And then when we decide to actually go there, even though I had recently watched it like a month or two ago, I would rewatch it. And I do this thing where I take my cell phone and I take pictures of my TV screen to take notes because I want to get the exact line right, or I want to get the description of Mystic Mother's palace. No spoilers, right? Because there's just like one establishing shot for like 2 seconds on the show.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a picture of this and I'm going to look at it on my phone. And okay, she's got the giant M and there's like 4 domes. So I get the description right when we do HyperForce. So that's like how much Power Rangers I've seen.
No, you can definitely tell the little details and stuff that go into it. Because I'm even like, wait, that was a thing, and then people are saying it. I'm like, oh wow, oh yeah. Like I didn't even, I forgot some of this stuff, but it's pretty cool to see those little details thrown in there. Definitely.
Well, I have to accept that I'm never going to be more of a mental encyclopedia live than the collective, hive mind that is the internet chat room. Like, I accept I'm going to get things wrong. I'm a human being, So I try the best I can, though, because I love like weaving in little details.
Yeah, no, it definitely shows. So that's pretty awesome. So we have a question from Alex Desmarais at I_am_Alex8578 on Twitter. So he wanted to know, in getting things prepared for HyperForce, how was the Power Rangers bootcamp that was mentioned in the Twitch content?
Oh my goodness. So I feel like I'm still going through it, but they have like this 70-page document that you have to learn. It's mostly, well, I wouldn't say it's mostly pictures, but it's everything from just like franchise production history to terminology to yeah, like there's so many fantastic statistics in there, like how much better Power Rangers content does on YouTube compared to other, like nerdy universes, and how diverse the fandom is, like how there are more fans that are, people of color, which makes sense because Power Rangers has always embraced diversity, which I love. And so there was like stuff like that in there. And then there was stuff like monster of the week, general, like certain terminology where I just like, it's like the gold art, like that's how I knew it as a fan, but there was like very set terminology from them. And then I had to kind of learn to change my language because you're like, oh yeah, he died. But it's like defeated or destroyed is their terminology. And you have to say blaster, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. And like who was the most popular ranger in terms of like toy sales through history and like that kind of thing. So it was all sorts of stuff. It was really interesting for me as a fan, though, because it's like you get a totally different perspective. Because for me, I'm still like, I'm a little kid, I love all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds so cool. I would love to see all the statistics, all that. Like that's so fascinating to me to see all that information. Definitely. Now, HyperForce itself, when it debuted, so this question's from Jason Ranger at the J Ranger on Twitter. HyperForce has had such a strong positive response, which it rightfully deserves from the Power Rangers fandom. Was that response more than what you expected HyperForce to receive? Or?
I didn't know what to expect because even though I love Power Rangers, I'm not like super active on the Ranger boards or that kind of I think I was intimidated. I was like, I don't know if I know Power Rangers enough. Am I like cool enough? I don't feel cool. I feel like a nerd. Um, so I was a little nervous about like I don't know enough details about Power Rangers. I haven't seen every single episode and I don't remember episodes I have seen because it's so much to remember. So I was nervous about that. And then I also felt a lot of pressure on my shoulders because I'm not a trained performer. I don't have a theater degree. What I do professionally and what I went to school for was game design. However, the idea that Hyper RPG had and Saban Brands was, you know what? It's very clear that you love the franchise and you're a fan, and it's maybe okay to not have another actor because you can be the person that the other fans interface through, you know? So it's like, and also I think Andre is the other like person who's street like a very visible fan on the show where like we have so I always say with Hyperforce we're telling two stories. We're telling the stories of Chloe and Eddie and Marv and that kind of thing. And we're also telling the stories of friends at a table, you know, reliving these Power Rangers moments. And I think it's like me and Eddie and sometimes Peter. I keep mixing up their character names and their person, but Peter and Andre and myself who are like, bah! You know, and I have to like contain myself and have poker face about like what are we gonna reveal next. So yeah, it's been cool, but I did feel an enormous pressure to, um, you know, like serve the fans and honor the fans and what they love and show how much I love it because nothing sucks more than seeing somebody like wah, wah, something you love, you know. And some people have favorite seasons and some people have seasons they don't like, and I didn't want to, you know, something that I might not like somebody else loves. That was when they peaked in Power Rangers, so I want to, you know, do that justice. And it's supposed to be a celebration of all 25 years, so you know there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah, every season is someone's first. I mean, every season really
Yes,
means
yes,
something to someone. Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah. So with Hyperforce, in writing the show, and so in writing it, it's you and Cameron, right? From are basically
So
the writers, or
actually it's a lot more than that. It's myself, it's also Cameron, it's Zach who's waving in the background.
Hi,
It's Zach as
Zach.
well. We just woke up. It's very early on the Pacific Coast. Um, and also our friends at Saban Brands, Melissa, and some of the others too, and our own cast members. So we have a group text message, and we're talking to each other all week long. And I also have private like text messages and emails with them, talking about okay, what do we want to explore? So um, before the season even started, we had 7-page character homework for all the cast members. And they wrote out, what name do I want to be? What's my birthday? What's my horoscope? What's my favorite food? What's my favorite color? What are my parents like? Was I brought up, you know, conservative or liberal? Like all these, like very, very detailed stuff. Who was my first kiss? You know, do I believe in like all sorts of stuff? Because in an RPG setting, when anything can happen, you really have to know that character. You're not just saying a line, you have to internalize and understand, oh, I think Jack would do this. I think Marv would do this. So they really have to know their character, or if we, you know, it's all about growth and transformation too. So if we don't feel like a character has had the opportunity to grow or show how they're transforming or something, I'll work with them about like what would trigger them to overcome a personal struggle. So there are certain episodes like with Santa Claus and, you know, with the mother, don't want to spoil too much, where, you know, we really confront them to show how they can grow as rangers. So, you know, that's all been cool. So it's a collaboration with all of us. I can tell you though, some episodes are more me, some of them are more Cameron, some of them are more Zach, but we have weekly meetings more than once a week about the story. So it is a collaborative effort, but some ideas are more like one person or another. So whatever serves the story best. And we have
Gotcha.
to write it per episode. So we couldn't write like all 20 something episodes at once because we have to take in what the players do. So we'll have ideas. We have like a very brief outline, and we'll give them like bullet points. Or it's like, it doesn't matter what you do in this scene, you're all going to end up here anyways, kind of thing. Or I mean, it does matter, but it's more about the journey than the destination, because we're all like end up here. However, sometimes they surprise us, or the dice surprise us, or whatever for that reason. Then we have to kind of regroup the next day, and then we talk about how do we go forward from here. So it's a weekly challenge. I think about and I work on the show every day of the week.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was, kind of curious about how much of that is sort of outlined, and then of course a lot of it's improv, because you do have certain episodes, like you have a special guest there, like they're going to be there for that episode. So by the end of it, in some way or fashion, they have to leave. So you have to get from point A to point B, but you don't know how it's going to happen. So it's interesting to see that where it goes with each episode.
Yeah, so we usually actually I send the cast emails that say beats. And so like beat 1, and I try to put more of a motivation rather than what they're doing. So like, you're motivated by protecting your brother. You're motivated by getting more information and getting to the root of the problem. You're motivated by how hurt you were last episode, that kind of thing. And so less like you do this and more like, this is the important emotional beat you want to hit. You can go either way. You could retreat internally, or you could lash out and be upset at everybody, so it's their choice how they want to act. However, I always remind them at the bottom of my email every week, and remember to be rangerly, because that's very important to Saban Brands to protect that. And I think also the fans would be disappointed if they weren't being the heroes that they were chosen to be.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Is there a scene, and this question comes from Ari at 3Ezekiel on Twitter. So is there a scene that you have written the most for, and a scene that the players did something that completely negated all of your planning?
No, because I say like I'm not a performer and stuff, but I've also taken like improv classes at UCB in Los Angeles. So Hyper RPG has already done years of RPG content. So we accept that. It's not like I had a beautiful vision in mind. No, I never approach the GM's table that way. It's always an improv experience. So it's less about me trying to mastermind a plan and they run away from it. It's more like they will invent something, a surprise something. Because I have my own ideas how they might solve a puzzle or get out of a situation, and they solve it in a completely different way. But I don't go, no, I say yes and roll for it. Right. So that's more of the surprises. Oh, like, for example, Polly, he like comes up with all sorts of like technology and explanations, and he does it so confidently that everybody's just like, yes, you're so, just like confident and so good with his, and so like fleshed out. I'm like, yes, but as the GM, I have to balance out and say, okay, you have to roll for it. Otherwise, people just imagine things in their favor all the time, and then they don't seem heroic because they're not overcoming real challenges, right? So that's why I'm there.
Now, in doing that kind of improv, I'm sure there's probably been times when they've surprised you, and then you have to sort of improv along with it as maybe some of the side characters or that sort of thing. So
all the time, I have these poop moments where like JDF was like, why don't you rap, Alpha? Yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I am not a poet. I cannot rhyme things. Like, and they just start like, and I'm like, what am I gonna say? So, and then like, I think it got clipped and then pinned to the top of the Power Rangers Twitter account for a while. I'm like, oh, I can't even watch it. I'm so embarrassed. So there are moments like that, or like when Christina was like, are you because I'm kind of Spanish? And I'm like, I don't know. This wasn't in the Power Rangers boot camp. And like, I'm not an official representative of Saban Brands, but I do like represent them in some capacity. So I'm also worrying about things that people, I don't think they realize what I'm worrying about. So in normal human speech, we use terms like Kleenex and Jello and Coca-Cola. And the other night I was about to say it looks like a small airplane, like a Cessna. Like I have to try to take brand names out of my speech. Of course, anything that's adult language, that's why I'm like dingalings and poppycock and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just I'm always having to like keep other things in mind, keep where we're headed, keep the stats going, because I want the performers to like focus on the storytelling. But yeah, all the time, during that very spoilers, intense moment with the mother, they were really pouring their heart out. It was really intense. And then we play the music in the background, which is for the audience, but it's for us as performers too. And it's like very intense music. And I have to play, she's like over 11,000 years old. We don't know how old she is. And like I have to play somebody with that much grandeur and that much wisdom. And they're pouring their hearts out. And I'm like, phooey, like, what do I say? And so I just did that thing where I just took what they said, show that I was listening, and turn it back on them. And that's supposed to be like the best improver does that. And so basically what I heard from Jack, Polly's character, was I know what I need to do, but something's keeping me back from doing that. And I think as adults, we can all relate to that. I think that's super powerful. I think to me, that was the internal issue that I related to the most as a human being. And I told him what I think I need to hear as a human being, right? Which was, what you already need to do. You just need to reach out. Right. So that was a very powerful moment to me too. And that was like, we didn't write that stuff. I didn't have a meeting with him before the show. Like, what is the thing that you're going to overcome? I think I might have, I didn't ask them what it was, but I might have given them the note to like, think about like an internal struggle your character is having right now. And then they just blurt it out on the show and I have to give them sage advice on it, so it's fun. And I think a lot of good moments have come out of embracing anything can happen.
Right. No, and so that question came from Jose Francisco Marquez Cervantes on Facebook. Just wanted to know about those improvisations. And he also said he wanted to know if you're keeping tabs on the times that you've said, "Oh my goodness," since the phrase was made a sticker.
So I didn't realize this. You know how you all have like tics and people are like, did you know you carry your right shoulder higher than your left shoulder? And you're like, I don't know, because I don't have eyeballs outside of my body. And apparently that's like my catchphrase. I always say that. My grandmother, when I was growing up, was very religious. She was Catholic, and she would say, "Don't say the Lord's name in vain." And so I think from childhood, I would try not to say like, "Oh my God." Right. And so that was a thing. And because I'm on a Power Rangers show and my brain goes a different mode where I don't, say, profane words, or I try not to, I think Andre said, whatever once. But so that was like, even from childhood, like, oh my goodness is the safe thing to say. But it's become kind of funny because every villain that walks out is like, oh my goodness, Rangers, So yeah, it's a thing now. That's cool. We have meme culture on the internet.
Yeah, it makes it more, interactive. Then you have all the stickers going in the chat and everything when those moments happen. Makes it pretty
right,
pretty
because the chat room is ones that decide what becomes a meme, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Question from Stephen Lewis on Facebook about a moment that maybe the team got to do something like totally unplanned or interesting due to a role that was really good or really bad. Is there something that sticks out to you?
I think the one that everybody talks about is when Eddie and Vesper rolled the same. And I had that quick moment inside, because normally when you roll the same in the system, you just roll again, whatever. Let's see who wins. But I was like, no, we gotta use that, and it's these split-second decisions, and I'm like, we're gonna use this, and they're gonna have a struggle. Yeah. So that was like just the magic of the dice kind of moment. Um I mean, every time they roll very poorly, like double ones and that kind of thing. I think there's been a few times where Megan, Chloe's character, Chloe, Megan's character, she like failed and a civilian got hurt. Not seriously, but like scraped or something like that. And she really takes that to heart and is like, oh my gosh. So uh that's some GM evilness for you where instead of rolling really low and you just miss, you rolled so poorly that in some systems, like it's like you punch yourself in the face instead of somebody else. But in certain scenarios, it's like, no, you like missed and you scraped a bystander. So that's an example of some moments where people roll very poorly and it's like, oh no. Or even like um I tried to weigh the dice in his favor, but you know, JDF is like a real life martial arts badass, and in the show, like, you know, just an incredible martial artist, which knows like many styles of martial arts. So whenever he misses, um, you know, like it almost doesn't make sense because he's such a skilled fighter. However, I told him before the show, like, just embrace it because it's the dice and it's funny, and the audience enjoys seeing you fail as much as, you know, seeing you succeed. And it shows that you're overcoming more. And he's like, all right, well, I'll just show them how upset I am about it. So that was a lot of fun. In terms of big wins, so I will admit sometimes the Rangers don't do enough damage points to a monster's HP. However, I do have a very strict time constraint, and something that I think is in the spirit of Power Rangers is like a finishing move. So after they start fighting a monster for a little while, my dog's here. Say hi.
Hey.
um
Is that
after
a kaiju, right?
Yes, his name is
Yeah.
Kaiju Big Battle. He's named after another thing I can explain later, where people dress up in giant monster suits and do wrestling, like Mexican wrestling style, and they call it Kaiju Big Battle. So I named him after that. Anyways, where was I? Yes, so I will admit that sometimes it's like, you know, you need another like 3 hits to really take him down. However, after they fight a monster for a while, and I think Andre does it best, where it's like he finds a way to explain how this monster might be vulnerable to water. You know, like maybe it's like he sounds like he's kind of fire based, or this monster is made out of wood and wood swells if it's completely saturated, you know? So, you know, his weapon, he can only like do like max 12 damage because he's rolling 2d6 or something. But I might give him a little bit more because he used it in a clever way. So I give him if it sounds like they're describing a really nice way to finish the monster, and they're like close enough to like wiping out that monster's HP. And of course, in Power Rangers, they're defeated, they're not destroyed anyway, so you don't really have to take the HP down to 0. But if it's close enough and they're describing a moment that sounds like a really epic finish where they put their hands together and they use their giant team cannon, and they roll like well enough, because it's like, yeah, you describe that awesome finishing move, but you rolled like double ones or triple ones. It's like I can't give that to you. But if all those things align, I'll usually, you know, describe the epic destruction of that monster, because at the end of the day, the way the system is designed and why people watch in Hyper RPGs, chat room, and all that is for a Power Rangers story. So if it's lining up and it feels like a Power Rangers story to me, and of course it's my judgment call, that is what will happen.
Yeah, it's all there to serve the story, definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also, it's kind of a Power Rangers thing too, where out of nowhere they pull something out and they're able to defeat the monster. And it's like, okay, you know what? That's cool. It works. You know, it's the power of teamwork, or the power of, you know, it's There isn't always necessarily in Power Rangers, the TV show itself, have to be a specific detailed explanation. It sort of just happens, and that's kind of a staple of the franchise.
So what's interesting to hear you say that, because Power Rangers fans are very forgiving, because the show is like, well, another robot dropped off another giant robot, right? So there's that. And then there's RPG fans, and some RPG systems are very strategy based, and so there was a balance in coming up with a system of, like, adding more and more dice to your hand and specific numbers, and also the Power Rangers storytelling. So when we have things like numbers and dice rolls like that, it's to serve also our RPG audience, which we're trying to bring to the Power Rangers world. So Polly and Peter especially, they are experienced role playing gamers, so they ask me for these kinds of things. So that's why. And also in other systems, people know how much damage they have to do to defeat a monster, or they can guess through process of elimination. So then they can be like, oh, if we teamwork this, we'll definitely take it down. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff too.
So I have a question from Toku Anime Girl on Twitter. In all the HyperForce episodes so far, what episode has struck you the most, and which HyperForce Ranger do you want to explore more about his or her character?
What episode has struck me the most? I could say several. It's like, in what way, right? Uh, Loved going to RPM era, because the first few episodes were like goofy and fun and juice bar and smoothies and that kind of thing. And I let that happen because that kind of felt like it fit with the flavor of that season more. And then Corinth is different, right? So I think Vesper, Christina V's character, said something like, "Ooh, radiation. Will I like turn into a lizard and have superpowers?" And then I said, as a NPC of that world, "No, it's horrible. Like, children get really, really sick." And I don't know if I used the word die. I think I did. Because that is a different world. People are suffering from some kind of like radiation sickness. There's lots of pollution. People are suffering. So once I said that, I think the whole table was like, "Oh, I get where we are now. This is different." So it's been fun to kind of go from goofy, fun, heartfelt moments, serious, scary, dangerous, like another moment when, I don't want to spoil the things, but when Marv makes it onto the Alliance ship, and he just, I think it was just Marv, but it was also Peter as a person. Like, I he felt stuck, because I think he had like 6 HP, and he said, like, "I don't know what to do." He said that like several times, and I think that's very powerful, because you don't see that often on the TV show, even though it would make sense for a ranger to feel that way. Like, I don't know. I feel like I have no options, right? And people feel like that in life too. So I think that's very powerful. So those stick out. Also, Christmas. I think some of the fans have skipped the Christmas episode because they think it's filler, and they see like Santa Claus on the YouTube thumbnail. But there's a lot of character development in the Christmas episode. There's some heart to heart, look at the man in the mirror kind of moments with Santa Claus, which I thought was very interesting. And in terms of who we're looking to explore more, I am looking forward to explore more of Vesper's kind of origin story, because she's also exploring that as well. Recently, we explored Jack's story, which I think was really cool. So I would say Vesper, and then maybe come back to Chloe, because she just started opening the door, a little bit about her parents and her family, but we don't know what happened to them. So I'm excited. I don't know. Honest to goodness, I don't know what it is. So I'm not saying like we're going to explore this. I know what's going to happen. I have no idea. It's up to them.
No, that's so exciting. And I will say about the Christmas episode, I do think if anybody did not watch it, definitely go check it out. I mean, out of all the holiday specials, especially, like, it was probably one of the best Power Rangers holiday specials, and it was just so, like, it was fun, but there was a lot of character development too. And there were some cool moments. Like, I don't want to spoil too much as well, like you're saying, but like just Santa and like battleizer, just those words right there. Like, never thought that kind of thing would happen, but it's so fun to see what happens on the show.
Well, as a time traveling show, it's very awesome to think about. There are official rangers like the Wild West Rangers, and then there are like, what other moments in human history are a ranger like? Santa wears a suit. Why don't we think of him as, our rangers wear suits. They get powers when they wear their suit up. Somebody else wears a suit. He has his own powers. He can travel around the world and bring joy and goodness and presents. Like, so there was that, and then also the Knights of the Round Table, another super team from human history. Like, why don't we think of them as rangers? Maybe they were. I wasn't there, right? So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was always really cool to see the lore kind of expand in that way, for sure. So some questions from Pocky at the Disco at Pocky Squirrel on Twitter. Which HyperForce player is most likely to help you kind of advance any plans for the story, and which is the most prone to going rogue and derailing things?
So it's not I know a lot of people, I think this is probably other people who GM RPGs, where they're like, I thought they were going to go right. I told them, like, sort of go in this direction, and they went this way. I don't feel that as much, because it's like, okay, you went this way. I just accept it. I don't feel, I guess I'm not like that controlling with the story, because it's all about imagination, and everybody at the table can bring new things. That being said, I think you can see that Andre, and I would say Megan as well, they were kind of, they didn't play tabletop RPGs before, so they were a little nervous. So they really listened to me and took my cues, and I drop hints as NPCs in the world, so they stick very closely. And then I think Jack, Polly's character, he's the one that drives the story forward, because sometimes it's easy to sit back and like have a discussion, but you're standing right in front of a monster, so it doesn't make sense that you would discuss how to defeat that monster for 15 minutes, and it's also a drag to watch for you guys. So he's very good with the forward motion of the story. I would say Christina is the one that surprises me the most. So her character Vesper, where it's like, huh? But it's not in ways that like ruin anything. It's I think
Right.
it's I think all of the people at the table bring additive elements to the story, and so we build this all together, where it's like, if we were all building like stone soup, and people brought potatoes and onions and carrots and oh, I've never put mushrooms in soup before, but let's bring it on in. They never bring like a bar of chocolate, where it's like, oh, I don't know, that might ruin the whole soup. They always bring stuff that makes sense to me, because they know their characters and they know the world, which is very helpful.
Right. No, that's true. She also had asked the question about, is there anything you know or can tell us about when and if a home version of the game will be available?
Let's say there is movement. That's what I've been saying. There is movement, and you have to understand, as fans, I want all the stuff that you guys want. Oh my goodness. Selfishly, I'm like, screw everybody else. I want a toy of our Megazord that opens up and reconfigures into all these different configurations. I want, this and that and all the sorts of things. That being said, there are a lot of moving parts. I mean, people understand like manufacturing, demand, supply, all that kind of stuff. I can tell you that the people at Saban Brands are fans of HyperForce. It's not like they don't like the show. So they also want it too, but there's a lot of logistical things to get product on shelves, right? That's like a whole other conversation. So it's not like we haven't talked about it and there is movement, but I can't commit to dates or actual development images or that kind of thing. But I'm sure if you follow us on social media and on the show, you guys are going to be the first to know.
Sounds good. Tyler Waldman at RSF on Twitter had a question as well about, we haven't really talked about, you're the GM and there's a lot involved in that, but then you also get to play a whole bunch of these side characters. So he wanted to know, how do you go about prepping some of your impressions?
So one thing was, before HyperForce started, I did some one-on-one voice acting coaching with Erin Fitzgerald. You can look her up. She's a fantastic voice actress who's done so many different roles. And one thing that she's known for is playing multiple characters. So some voice actors, they're like, I'm going to do all of Henry's lines. Then I'm going to do all of Samantha's lines. Then I'm going to do all of Bob's lines. She's not like that. She will go down a script and have conversations with herself, and is so strong with each character. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And so I did a little bit of work with her to get better at that specific skill, because that's a very specific skill. Whereas our characters who are on the cast, they play one character. I have to go through, and sometimes I have to have conversations with myself. And so there's a, I could really go into it, but there's a couple things that happen. One is trying to write on an index card a physical description so I can paint an image. And hopefully I've done it well enough. I've seen some really good fan art where it's like, oh, that was what I was imagining and trying to describe. So it's like, oh, it's working. Great. So there's that. Then I also try to do some kind of physical mannerism. And it really helps when you're playing multiple characters. So we had Anton Mercer and Mesogog, which are, they're two people, but they're in the same body. So I did this little trick where it's like, Mesogog talks this way, and then Anton talks this way. So every time I would, so having little physical things like that. When I do Alpha, I try to do this, even though his hands aren't always up. It kind of helps because I don't get to wear a costume. And there was like 2 weeks where I was sick, so I couldn't even change my voice that much. So like, this is Alpha, this is a bad guy, this is an evil guy. Last week there was, somebody who talked like this, which is very ugly lips, but he had kind of a frog's mouth. So there's a little bit of a physical thing. And then also there's some voice acting work where it's like, are you talking from a head voice, which is like through your eyes? Are you talking through your nose? Are you talking through your throat, or through your chest, or through your diaphragm? So there's all of that. And then there's placement. So even if it's a throat voice, kind of like this, I could kind of place it in my right foot. So this is a certain kind of character. And then there could be a subtle character, like maybe her sister or her twin, who's placed on her left foot, and it sounds very subtly different. So even though they're both throat voices, I have a mental positioning of where I put it in my body. And this is something I learned from Erin Fitzgerald, where she creates a character who, oh, it's a chest voice, but he always kind of talks like this, and it's in the left earlobe. It's very, very strange, but it's a system that works for me. Other voice actors have their own work, but that's what she taught me. So I try to bring some of that to the table, but the physicality helps a lot. I think Andre picked up to it, because sometimes, like, you lead that character with your hand, or because the alliance leader, I'm trying to protect his identity, I always try to pull back a little and kind of retreat in, right? Because he's one of these, because he's, I imagine him as this like hood, and like in real life you can't do that because you would see his nose or something, but like in anime or something,
like the shadows, it's like,
it's always like the shadow. So I try to like retreat in when I play that character. So that's some of the prep work I do. And then if it's a real character from the show, then I will watch that episode over and over again. I'll watch the lines over and over again. And then Mystic Mother has very few lines, and she uses two voices in the two episodes that she's in. And it was there was one phrase that I would repeat over and over again. It was like, and if darkness returns, you shall find it's like fight it or something like that. And so I was just walking around the house all day saying that phrase. I have like a ritual where I do vocal warm-ups if I have time. And then also I take a shower before the show. And this is so funny. I I read my shampoo and conditioner bottles. They have very detailed descriptions on the back of them about how they're like moisture balancing for your hair and will restore bounciness and shine. But I will read it in the character's voice.
So one day there was basically like Rita Repulsa almost, or like, Mystic
yes,
Mother,
but
like
in the
her voice coming,
shower,
right.
talking about how you'll no longer have dandruff, like that kind of thing. Or, there was another character where it was like I was hungry before the show, so I went and got a burger at a fast food drive-through, and I paid and I answered and I ordered in the character's voice, and I probably looked crazy. But if you're like too nervous to do the voice to yourself because it's so outlandish and it's so hammed up, like you're not going to be able to do it well. So it's like, great, I'll do this crazy voice. I'll do this crazy voice to the poor girl who just wants to know how crispy I want my French fries, at In-N-Out Burger. And if I can do it to her, then I can do it to the 1,000 people who are watching in the chat room. So that's some of the preparation I do for the characters.
Nice. Well, it definitely shows, because I know there's been a couple of recent episodes, especially, that there's so many different characters that you're juggling between, and I feel like we really can get a sense of each individual character and stuff. So all that prep work definitely pays off for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, it was like 2 episodes ago, I think, I was really sick. I don't know if you could tell. I had the sweats, and I'm like, why am I sweating? I'm like the fever sweats. And I think Dayquil only lasts like 3 hours when you take it. So I really leaned into more of the physicality because I couldn't. Alpha was so hard because I think because it's up in the nose and it was like vibrating the phlegm that was in my sinuses. I was like, I cannot do this. And I think even the chat room were like, Alpha sounds kind of British today, but you got to do it because, there was some idea like, oh, if I can't GM because I'm too sick, like who can do it? Maybe Zach or something. But I felt the responsibility to take care of my players at the table. I know their characters the best. I've been with them on this journey for months now. Somebody stepping in wouldn't be as sensitive to their particularities. So even though they can do anything, we've been on this journey together to create this character. So I don't always know, but I have an idea what that character would do in a certain scenario I put them in.
So Ryan at Metal Gear Ryan want to know, is there a favorite character that you have to play, or any character that you want to play in the future?
I think it already happened, which is Mystic Mother. Oh my goodness. I love her so much. And she's just so over the top, which is so funny because she doesn't lose her Rita mannerism. She still has a headache. She's sassy. She's so sassy. I love it. But now she has the wisdom of being on the good side as well. So she has been intensely evil and intensely good. And also, I think comicbook.com said, what, if any, character could you play? And I love characters that have a transformation from evil to good. Mesogog. We haven't done it yet, but Astronema, all these characters, because you have a big range that you can explore and play in. So I love any of these characters from the season that are really big, but also I've been trying to create other characters like M and Detective Song in the current episode, where let's put in other players who maybe they aren't Rangers officially, but they are also inspired by just being around Rangers, and they can rise to the challenge to be heroic, because I think that is the narrative as fans, at least myself, that I believe in. Even though I don't have a morpher. I don't have a giant Zord I can call from the sky. I can see that the people on screen, they're being so heroic and they're making the tough decisions. I'm inspired to be a hero in my own life. And, that can mean different things to different people at Hyper RPG. We've taken that to mean charity. We've done a lot of charity work. Recently, when there was like fires in Ventura County, we went and visited one of the animal shelters that took in all the animals that were now homeless. And then we actually donated money to them. We also, a couple episodes of HyperForce, we've raised money for the Halo Foundation, which is they take orphans and underprivileged youth, and they do art therapy, education, water, and they have programs in the United States. They have programs all around the world. So, I don't have a giant Zord from the sky and I can't fix all the real world's problems, but if we can make a small change and make one life breathe better, that's very, very important to me because it's a story about heroism. And we know from Twitch data, actually, Twitch announced at one of their TwitchCons a couple of years ago, the favorite genre of most Twitch viewers in terms of movies is superhero. So we've been really thinking about that and what does that mean? And I don't know what that means, but we've been trying to explore it.
Now, Azuriel Kirby wanted to know, how has your GMing changed from the first episode to now?
Lots of ways. And if you watch the show, I hope you can tell. One thing is balancing what I tell the audience and what I don't in terms of because at first I think I didn't tell people what difficulty it was. I would just roll against them or something. And so now I'm like, it's a 3 difficulties so that the performer, the player knows oh, if it's a 3 difficulty and I get a 1, I should be very disappointed about that. If it's something very easy and I say it's a 2 difficulty, they're like, all right, I got it. If I say it's a 5 difficulty, they'd be like, oh, I understand how hard this will be. So that is something that I've changed. I keep saying now, but I've tried to just be a better presenter and not a lot. And he's also a very awesome actor. And he wrote me a little note one day that said, just because you're thinking about a lot of things doesn't mean people need to know about it. So I've tried to do my best to be a better just speaker and presenter. Additionally, I don't know. As the players have gotten more confident in themselves and learned what character they're playing more, learning who they are as a character, I've tried to give them opportunities, and also with the writing team, working on putting them in scenarios where they have more freedom to, you could stay, you could leave, you could discuss, you could, fight, you could, so giving them more freedom to really explore as well. Because at first it was kind of a little bit more beat by beat, and now we've given them a lot more freedom. There's some episodes where it's almost no beats, and I just tell them just a few emotional beats, but I don't tell them actual plot details. So they've been really rising to the challenge, which puts more work on me though, because if I feel like I'm confusing them, I'm not doing a good job. So it's very easy to be confusing because we don't have maps in this RPG about positioning. So where are you? That kind of thing. So just working about being more clear and articulate about what's happening in the scene. And as Polly calls it, he calls it geography. So I've been trying to do more geographical explanation. So as GMs, also think about, that's my GM tip of the day, think about geography and where you're placing your players, because they can use that environment to their advantage. I'm going to look around for a rope, well, in a prison cell, I don't know if there would be a rope, that kind of thing.
Right. No, that definitely good point. Now, the other part about the show is that it is interactive, not just with the chat with the audience, but the audience can do the little widget with the Twitch game, the little app, and send energy to the players as well. What thought process, and this comes from Benny at BenActive on Twitter, what thought process did you all go to create that piece of the system? Did you consider other mechanics? How did that come together?
That came together really quickly. So after Saban Brands was like, all right, we're going to do this, and we were trying to cast a show and do all the assets, the art, that kind of thing. Twitch had a huge announcement, Twitch extensions. And we're like, oh, that is so cool. But we had 2 weeks to get that up and running. And that was, remember, I don't know, did you watch the TwitchCon announcement? We announced the show at TwitchCon, but that night in the hotel room, we were working on that extension. So I didn't even really get to enjoy TwitchCon. It was in the hotel room crunching on that project. Go out, have the big announcement, and then go back to the hotel room and be a developer. That's, that's what I do. I'm a game designer. So like, getting art assets ready and UX charts and that kind of thing. And there's another extension that is a text-based RPG, and we took some inspiration from that. But other than that, it's a new thing. Like, we haven't seen anybody experiment with Twitch extensions that much. However, because it was a new thing Twitch was trying to push, we knew that if we push something, then Twitch might give us more promotion for the show. So that was the thing. And Hyper RPG monetizes its shows because that's how we're able to, pay our employees and give them health insurance and make rent here and, buy camera equipment and lights and that kind of thing. And we wanted to have an opportunity for you to interact with the show that wasn't necessarily money driven because, everybody has a different budget. I completely understand. So we saw this extension as an opportunity for people to interact with the show without money and also to try this new tool from Twitch. But it was completely an experiment and hoping to do a few updates so that like maybe no promises players can play with other players and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting to have those. You have your super megas and ultras that you can do with money, or the free option with the extension and being able to provide energy. So having different options available certainly is.
Yes, because all Hyper RPG shows, I don't know if you know, are interactive. We always try to take in something from the audience so that you guys can change it too.
So in doing HyperForce, you've gotten the opportunity to have a bunch of Rangers from the past come onto the show. What would be your dream Ranger to have on? Maybe that hasn't been on yet, because I know some of them that have come on, I mean, obviously, are pretty legendary, but
I want to tell you, but I'm talking to him, so that's a clue. And he might show up. So
okay.
I don't want to tell you because then you guys will know where the story is going, and you might have ideas of what we might do with that character or to that character, which might, this is a time traveling show. So if we go back in history, we change something about that character that could change all of Power Rangers history, right? So I can't tell you, but my Dream Ranger choice is. It might happen. So I can't. Right. I'm sorry.
No, I like the teasing. It makes it fun to guess and see, what's gonna come next. So then, I don't know if you. This is kind of a different question then, but sort of related. But yeah. Jonah Armitage on Facebook is your personal favorite season and Ranger.
Oh my goodness. So I told you I love Power Rangers in space, but I think it was the right time for me. And I was so compelled by the Astronema plotline in that and Ecliptor. And it's just, because I love one of the big themes in Power Rangers is choice or destiny. And I love that anybody, bad guy or good guy, because I think in some, IP, like it was their destiny to be bad. It's always a choice in Power Rangers, which I love, 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 and I believe in. So that, and then also, I think I had an underappreciation for RPM. I didn't watch it that much when it was on the TV show. And even like the first episode, I was confused. Is this like Power Rangers Goes Mad Max? It was strange to me. Like, there's this guy and he has a lollipop in his mouth because, they can't put cigarettes. Like, I didn't get it. But then I got into it and I'm like, whoa. So that is probably like In Space and RPM are probably my current favorites right now. and you know, Corone, or not Corone, excuse me. I already talked about her. Dr. K and Tanaya, those are like my two faves. So I guess not, well, astronomer becomes Corone, but
She's a
not
ranger.
not
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So like, but so it's these other characters that go through transformation that are the most compelling to me. But oh my goodness, so many. I mean, meeting Mike was so cool. Let's see. And I've met like Peter, and I've met well, I've always wanted to, and I heard that he lives in California. I want to meet Brennan Mayha because I also
Mhm.
really liked his character from Dino Charge. So I think I would, yeah. He's like my new favorite, but I also have that other ranger I want to bring in from like my childhood that I want on the
Right.
show too. So we'll see.
Yeah, Brennan's pretty cool. I will say he is really good at Smash Brothers and Pokemon. He has destroyed me in those online before, so he is definitely a gamer. It's really cool. You mentioned as well, and Muteki Dragon on YouTube wanted to know that you've watched a little bit of Sentai as well. So, are you a fan of some of the Sentai? Is there certain Sentai seasons or anything that you've seen that has stuck out to you?
Um, so like Sentai is very new to me, right? And so I watched Ranger kind of recently to kind of just learn more, like research for the show. But I really wanted to focus on consuming Power Rangers because I also am paranoid that I'm going to confuse Sentai with the Power Rangers stuff because I'm very in the moment. I'm improving these stories, and if I saw something on Sentai and I confuse it for something that didn't happen in Power Rangers, that would be not good. So I've like haven't watched that. However, everybody, even at Saban Brands, told me like Gokaiger is like the one. So probably after our HyperForce season ends, I'll probably binge Gokaiger. And then they already told me about like Gokai Christmas, which I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm very excited to delve into the Sentai world, but I'm mostly like a Power Rangers fan, probably because of accessibility. Because it's like, how do you guys watch this stuff? Do you like buy DVD box sets, which is what I did for Jew Ranger? But like, can it be like on Netflix? That would be very convenient for me, please. So yeah, so I don't know too much about the Sentai, and I actually use Peter as like my consultant for some of the Sentai stuff because I know he's been trying to sneak some of that stuff in, and I'll be like, Peter, in the Sentai, did this happen? Yes or no? How did it play out? That kind of thing.
So, do you have a favorite? And this comes from Spice and Rose at Rose and Spice on Twitter. Do you have a favorite Power Rangers video game, not including Legacy Wars?
Not including Legacy Wars. So I just downloaded this thing as a recommendation for the fans. So like people who tweet me, I listen. So this is I don't know if you guys can see. It is, what is this called? It has a time, yeah, Power Rangers Unite. It has a time traveling story. And I'm like, why have I never heard about this before? So I'm getting into this. It's the story is very similar to ours, or there's some overlap. So I've gotten some ideas from it. Uh I don't want to like give my feedback about that. So there's it's okay. It's okay. I'm at work professionally because I am a game designer. I'm very critical, especially about UX and UI. So if I don't like it, I won't say anything. But yeah, so Legacy Wars is fantastic. And I have also my friend at work. He gave me the Power Rangers Time Force Game Boy Advance video game. So I have to relocate my Game Boy Advance. I have to play that too. So just getting into kind of the extra stuff that's not the TV show or the Boom comics, just to see these other ways that Power Rangers has been taken. And then there's two people DM me on Twitter. Hold on, maybe I can find it. It was about another Power Rangers time traveling story where it's like Lord Zed goes back in the past and collects
Hmm.
other bad guys. Do you know about this?
I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar to me, but honestly,
I
there's
will.
so much that I
There
don't even.
is so much. I don't claim to know it all as well. And then even stuff I've already seen, like I'll forget details. Oh, it's called Super Legends. It was on PS2 and I think PC and the DS. Power Rangers Super Legends. And I had like never heard about this thing. And thank you to the two fans who DM me because it's Lord Zed who goes back in the past and collects um like shards of the morphin grid or something like that and other villains. So it is very similar to our storyline. So yeah, I'm still learning. And if you guys have any suggestions for things for me to check out, just tweet it at me.
So, Pocky Squirrel on Twitter had a question about what are some other tabletop systems you enjoy either to play or to GM for?
So I've done this at Hyper RPG. There is a system called Fate, and there's a setting in Fate called Mecha vs. Kaiju. And so we did a lot of research. We were surprised there was no Power Rangers tabletop RPG. So we had to come up with one for the show, which I think was good because there is no like one size fits all tabletop system. So I created one that I felt invoked what was Power Rangerly. But Fate is also a lot of fun one. I like story driven RPGs. Zach and I discovered 10 Candles, which is a horror based RPG system that's a lot of fun. Um, Also, there's this other one that's a lot of fun that I've been a player on. It's called Kick Ass or Chew Bubblegum. And you only have two choices. You either kick ass or chew bubblegum. So in our system where we like have to roll dice, you don't do that. In this one, you just kick ass or chew bubblegum. And with the bubblegum, you have a set amount of pieces. And as you like chew them, it's like easier and easier to kick ass. So it makes the story kind of escalate. So at first it's kind of harder and then it gets easier. So that one's a lot of fun. But we experiment with a lot of tabletop RPG systems on Hyper RPG. If you don't watch, you should check it out. But there's a lot of fun ones, but I prefer the storytelling driven ones and not the lots of numbers and dice and that kind of thing.
And then Brian Davis wanted to know if you have any advice for a game master that wants to run their own Power Rangers tabletop RPG that's not related to HyperForce. And I'll extend that as well to just in general with being a game master.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think with anything, and let me extend this to also being a game designer, you should outline your goals from the beginning. And this is my goal for the show, which is as a fan of Power Rangers, I think everybody would love the experience of being a ranger, right? I get lots of DMs about, oh, can I be the sixth ranger? Can I join your show? That kind of thing. People want to guest on our show, etc. So everybody seems to want to have this experience to be a Power Ranger. And why not? You get to morph up. You call Zord from the sky. You make an even bigger Zord, the Megazord. When you form, like, you get a team of friends. It's so, so cool. And you get to kick monsters' butts, as Haim, puts it himself. So as a game designer, I see this as an experience that you're designing for people. And what experience are you trying to give? And to me, it's the experience of being a ranger. So, from the bottom of my heart, I really do hope we are able to release the tabletop system and rules in some way, because for all the fans at home who've grown up with Power Rangers and always had this feeling like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? And for people who've already written their own fan fiction, having this system to facilitate it is my goal. However, you can narrow it down. So, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you feel the fear and intensity of facing a monster that's the size of a skyscraper? Does that mean you feel the camaraderie of the friends at the table? Like, what is it like to be on a super team? Um, does that mean you are a collector of epic tools, items, and weapons. So I think when you create your Power Rangers RPG for you and your friends, and if you're the GM, talk to your friends about what being a ranger means to them, because it is different. Like there's a whole like collector part of the Power Rangers fandom, and it's all about like collecting and discovering the new Zords and new weapons and that kind of thing. To me, it's more about like the heroic and being the storytelling, that kind of thing. So outline those goals with your players, and then award them energy for fulfilling those goals. I want my players to be heroic. So when they do heroic things like check in for innocent civilians, I try to award them for energy. When they make successful attacks, because I want them to do successful attacks, I reward them with energy. I want them to do more teamwork attacks. And when I first started the show, it was balanced in a way that was high risk, high reward, but then they didn't take the risk as much because they weren't getting the reward as often. So I made the teamwork attack easier. It's now a limit of 3 rangers. However, for every ranger that participates, the villain loses a die. So it's easier to succeed in teamwork attacks because I want to incentivize them to work more together and explain, okay, if we're working together, it's not like, yo, we teamwork it. It's I run as fast as possible and try to hoist my partner up into the air so they have an aerial advantage and take out their 2 blasters and take care of this guy. So to me, that's the goals that I want to reward. So think about, for your group, and every group is going to be different, what are the goals that you want to explore? And you as the GM reward those goals so we can shape it in a way that we want.
No, some great advice there, definitely, and thank you for that. So just to kind of wrap things up, is there anything that you can kind of I know, without spoiling anything, whatever, any teasers or anything for HyperForce coming up with the show?
Oh my goodness. You could say this about every episode, but this coming Tuesday, I don't know when your YouTube episode is coming up, but is the day before Valentine's Day. Uh something huge is gonna happen. And it's all about escalation, right? So each coming episode, we try to lay down more and more stakes. So the Rangers are going to get more powerful, but so are the villains. And so the bad guys are going to do something very big, hopefully. We'll see how the dice rolls, right? This coming episode, which is gonna take the threat of the alliance from like, oh shit, crap, poop, to like, psh, I hope. That's the plan. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see what the Rangers do, but it's getting towards, we're past the halfway point in the season. So I think even this past episode, it's less like, oh, goofy and fun times, let's make more burritos, and more like, we gotta be serious. We gotta be serious. So it's all escalating to a point. And when we pitched the show, we had a finale idea in mind. It wasn't the whole episode, it was just an idea. So this whole season, we've been trying to build up to this idea. So, catch up if you're behind, because when the finale comes out, you're going to want to be there in the Twitch room, in the Twitch chat room, experiencing it with everybody else, because it's going to be hopefully a big, epic, history shattering maybe kind of moment, and you'll have wanted to be on that journey with us to that point. So
Nice.
I guess that's all I can say, but yeah, we're just trying to make everything more and more intense.
Cool. No, that's very exciting. Can't wait to see where the story goes from here, for sure. Should be a lot of fun. To kind of end this as well, is there any social media, anything that you want to promote, let people know where they can find you?
Yes, I'm at hello_Malika on Twitter and Instagram. And that's pretty much it. My DMs are open. You can message me anytime. Also, I like to lurk in the Power Rangers HyperForce Facebook group and like things and also encourage people to do the things that they want to do. And also in Discord, I'm occasionally in Discord. There is a Hyper RPG Discord with a Power Rangers channel, and I'm in there. My username is Bunny Specs because I wear glasses and I like rabbits, and I used to foster them actually. So that's it. And thank you for having me, Hassan. It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's been so much fun, and I can't wait for everyone to watch this as well and hear from you. So thank you
And
so
thank you.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.